The balance of power in the Pacific is changing faster than at any point in recent history. Across Asia, governments are quietly watching one critical question: what happens if the United States begins stepping back from the region? That fear has intensified again after renewed debate surrounding Donald Trump's foreign policy vision and America's long-term military commitments overseas. In capitals across Asia, officials are increasingly asking whether Washington's allies can still rely on the same level of protection that defined the Pacific for decades. And nowhere is that concern more serious than in the Philippines. Today, the Philippines sits at the center of one of the world's most dangerous geopolitical rivalries. The South China Sea has become a major pressure point between China and the United States, and every military exercise, naval confrontation, and diplomatic statement now carries enormous consequences. For years, China has steadily expanded its reach across disputed waters. Tourist Chinese Coast Guard ships regularly patrol areas claimed by Manila. Filipino fishermen have repeatedly reported harassment, dangerous maneuvers, and intimidation near contested shoals and fishing grounds. What once appeared to be isolated incidents has gradually evolved into a much larger strategic campaign. Beijing is not simply competing over reefs or fishing zones. China is attempting to reshape the entire balance of power in Asia. That is why the Philippines matters so much. The country sits in one of the most strategic locations in the Pacific. Whoever gains influence around the Philippines gains access to critical sea lanes connecting the South China Sea to the wider Pacific Ocean. Some of the world's busiest trade routes pass directly through these waters, carrying massive amounts of global commerce every single year. For decades, America's military presence helped maintain stability in the region. U.S. aircraft carriers, military alliances, and defense treaties reassured smaller countries that China could not dominate Asia unchecked. But that confidence is now being tested. Donald Trump's political messaging has revived concerns about a more isolationist American strategy. Trump has repeatedly argued that allies should contribute more toward their own defense and that Washington should reduce costly overseas commitments. Supporters describe the approach as financially practical. Critics warn it could weaken deterrence at the most dangerous possible moment. In Asia, perception matters almost as much as military power itself. If countries begin believing that America's commitment is fading, the entire regional order could start shifting. Some nations may move closer to Beijing. Others could rapidly increase military spending. Several governments may begin preparing for a future where China becomes the dominant force in the Pacific. That possibility deeply worries officials in Manila. Under President Ferdinand Marcos Jr, the Philippines has dramatically strengthened ties with Washington, unlike previous administrations that sometimes attempted balancing between China and the United States. Marcos moved aggressively toward expanding defense cooperation with America. Military agreements were expanded. Joint patrols increased. American troops gained broader access to Philippine bases. Large-scale military exercises between the two countries became larger, more advanced, and significantly more aggressive in their scenarios. The annual Balikatan exercises became one of the clearest signals of that growing alliance. This year's drills involved thousands of troops, advanced missile systems, amphibious assault simulations, and maritime defense operations near strategically sensitive areas. American missile launchers capable of striking long-range targets were deployed in northern Philippine territory, sending a powerful message to Beijing. Japan and Australia also increased participation in regional security coordination, signaling that the Indo-Pacific security structure is gradually evolving into a broader coalition aimed at countering China's expanding influence. China reacted immediately. Chinese naval vessels increased activity near the exercise zones. Surveillance operations intensified. Beijing accused Washington of transforming the Philippines into a forward military platform designed to contain China. Chinese officials also warned Manila that allowing foreign military deployments could destabilize the region and increase the risk of confrontation. But inside the Philippines, many officials believe the country has little choice. The military imbalance between China and the Philippines is enormous. China's Navy and Coast Guard now operate on a scale far beyond anything Manila can counter alone. Beijing's artificial island bases across the South China Sea provide radar coverage, missile sites, airfields, and logistical support deep inside contested waters. Without allies, the Philippines would struggle to resist PSA pressure. That reality explains why Marcos Jr. has pushed strongly for closer security coordination with Washington, Tokyo, and Canberra. During recent diplomatic meetings, American and Philippine officials reaffirmed their defense partnership and condemned what they described as aggressive Chinese behavior in disputed waters. Both governments emphasized that attacks on Philippine vessels or forces operating in the South China Sea could trigger mutual defense obligations under existing treaties. Still, uncertainty remains. The central question haunting Asia today is simple. If a major crisis erupts, will America truly intervene officially? The answer remains yes. But allies are watching political signals very carefully. China understands that perfectly. Beijing's strategy rarely depends on sudden, large-scale military attacks. Instead, it frequently uses gradual pressure tactics designed to avoid triggering outright war while steadily changing realities on the ground. Chinese coast, guard ships block fishing boats. Military aircraft fly near contested areas. Maritime patrols intensify. Economic pressure increases. Each move individually may appear limited, but together they steadily expand Chinese influence. This strategy is commonly described as gray zone warfare, operating below the threshold of full-scale conflict while still applying enormous strategic pressure. Over time, those tactics can slowly wear down smaller countries without firing a single shot. That is why the Philippines has become one of the most important strategic battlegrounds in Asia. If China can weaken Manila's alliance with Washington, it would send a powerful message throughout the Indo-Pacific. Other countries would begin questioning whether American protection can still be trusted. That could dramatically reshape the future of the Pacific. But timing is especially dangerous because tensions across the region are already rising rapidly. Taiwan remains one of the biggest flashpoints between China and the United States. Chinese military exercises around Taiwan have become larger and increasingly aggressive. Warships and fighter jets now operate near the island almost constantly. Military planners believe the Philippines would become strategically critical during any Taiwan crisis because of its location near the Luzon Strait. Northern Philippine bases could support logistics operations, surveillance missions, and regional military coordination. That explains why recent U.S. deployments in the Philippines triggered such intense reactions from Beijing. China views these developments as part of a broader American strategy aimed at surrounding and containing Chinese power. Washington, meanwhile, argues the deployments are necessary to preserve regional stability and deter aggression. The problem is that both sides increasingly view the Pacific as essential to their long-term security interests. That makes compromise far more difficult. Inside the Philippines, this situation. And that has also become politically complicated. Domestic tensions have intensified in recent months, especially between President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and Vice President Sara Duterte. The country's internal divisions are beginning to overlap with major foreign policy debates, adding another layer of uncertainty during an already dangerous period. Meanwhile, controversies linked to investigations involving former President Rodrigo Duterte and Senator Ronald De La Rosa have further destabilized the political climate. Despite those distractions, Marcos continues pushing forward with expanded regional partnerships. Japan has strengthened defense cooperation with Manila. Australia increased maritime coordination efforts. More countries are participating in joint exercises and security planning across the Pacific. Many analysts now describe the emerging regional structure as an informal coalition designed to limit China's ability to dominate the South China Sea. Still, Beijing continues advancing steadily. China's military modernization over the last decade has been extraordinary. The People's Liberation Army Navy is now considered the world's largest naval force by number of ships. China has invested heavily in missile systems, cyber warfare capabilities, surveillance technology, and anti-ship weapons specifically designed to challenge American operations near Asia. At the same time, Beijing's economic influence continues expanding across the region. That combination of military and economic power gives China enormous leverage. For the Philippines, balancing these competing realities has become increasingly difficult. China remains one of Manila's largest trading partners and a major source of commerce and investment. But China is also the country applying the greatest strategic pressure in disputed waters. Marcos Jr. is attempting to strengthen deterrence without triggering direct confrontation. That balancing act is becoming harder every year. Ordinary Filipinos are increasingly feeling the consequences of these tensions. Fishermen operating near contested waters fear harassment or detention. Coastal communities worry about instability and economic disruption. Businesses fear that escalating tensions could damage tourism, trade, and investment. Many Filipinos support stronger military ties with the United States while simultaneously fearing that the country could become trapped between two superpowers. That fear is spreading across the wider region as well. Countries throughout Asia are rapidly reassessing their security strategies. Defense spending is rising. Military cooperation is expanding. Governments are preparing for a future shaped by long-term competition between Washington and Beijing. The economic implications are enormous. The Indo-Pacific contains some of the world's most important trade routes and fastest-growing economies. Any weakening of regional stability could disrupt shipping lanes, energy supplies, semiconductor production, financial markets, and global supply chains. Analysts warning about $2.1 trillion at stake are referring to the immense economic value connected to Pacific trade, maritime security, and regional investment networks. Any weakening of deterrence could ripple far beyond Asia itself. The Pacific is no longer just another geopolitical issue. It has become one of the defining battlegrounds of the 21st century. And at the center of that struggle sits the Philippines. If America maintains strong commitments and regional alliances remain united, China's expansion could face meaningful resistance. But if Washington appears uncertain or unwilling to remain deeply engaged, Beijing could gain enormous strategic advantages without direct military conflict. That is why every American policy debate now echoes across Asia. For smaller countries living beside China, credibility matters more than ever. They are not simply watching military deployments or diplomatic speeches. They are watching for signs of politica. How will, because in the Pacific today, the greatest weapon may not be missiles or warships. It may be confidence. Confidence that alliances will hold, confidence that commitments will be honored, and confidence that the balance of power in Asia has not already begun shifting permanently toward Beijing. The next few years may determine whether the Pacific remains shaped by American-led alliances or enters an entirely new era dominated by Chinese influence. And for the Philippines, the stakes could not possibly be higher.